A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We've heard this a billion times, but to fully grasp the meaning of this statement, we need to go back nearly 250 years. The year is 1779. The United States of America is only 3 years old, and the War of Independence is still ongoing. Baron Frederick von Steuben, Inspector General of the Continental Army, pens regulations for the order and discipline of the troops of the United States. Contained within are the instructions on the armings of soldiers, how to fire and load a musket, maneuvering of troops, and the setting up of defensive positions. Here we can see the regulations are actually the training and tactics a fighting man would need to know at the time. This is the context the Second Amendment was written in just 12 years later. Well-regulated militia should be read as a well-trained and drilled militia. Your ability to remain in a free state promised you by the Second Amendment is 100% dependent on being well-trained and drilled. The government has been attacking this right of ours for well over 100 years now. The Second Amendment still stands. You're legally allowed to train, drill, and obtain arms. It is still your right, as much as they're trying to take it away from you right now. So why does any of this shit matter? The chances of you, an American citizen, needing a gun is extremely low. But let's take a look at what I call the good times, bad times chart and logic this out. Okay, on the y-axis we have the state of the world. The top is good times, the bottom is bad times. On the x-axis we have your preparedness. On the right you have good gear, good training. On the left you have no gear, no training. So let's go through these four quadrants. So in good times of good gear and training, you get to have some fun and get some good exercise running around and doing some shooting drills with your buddies. The downside is it's going to cost you some time and money, so you'd have to dig into your Fortnite and Dorito budget there.
Fortnite, huh?
Next scenario, the world is experiencing good times, you have no gear or training. Well, you save some money, but now you're unprepared if things get worse. So you're kind of just hoping that things stay good. Now on to the bad times. With good gear and training, you have a better chance of survival and a better chance to influence the outcome of things. In return, there's a good chance that you will be directly targeted for your actions, though. Finally, bad times with no gear, no training, you're basically just a victim. There's nothing you can do except become a burden. This is what we call suboptimal. So here we can see being armed and trained is beneficial in both good and bad times. In good times, remaining unarmed can let us waste some time and money on other things. Whether or not that's good or bad, up for you to decide. And if you're unarmed in bad times, you're just fucked. So even though the chances of things actually getting bad are incredibly low, the logic follows that remaining armed and trained is the most beneficial for us. Thomas Jefferson puts it well in his letter to Peter Carr in the summer of 1785. Strong body makes the mind strong. As to the species of exercise, I advise the gun. While this gives moderate exercise to the body, it gives boldness, enterprise, and independence to the mind. Games played with the ball and others of that nature are too violent for the body and stamp no character on the mind. Let your gun, therefore, be your constant companion of your walks. So let's get on to the gear that a modern Minuteman may equip himself with. So there's a lot here. We'll be breaking it down Barney style. But it's important to mention that everything here is just suggestion, sometimes speculation. I'd use this as a starting point for you to come to your own conclusions instead of a rigid guide. This chart also assumes that you're living in the U.S. and you're starting from the bottom and have no firearms or training. If you got some training in some areas, you can just kind of skip through it. But this pyramid will be climbed bottom up. Do not proceed to the next tier until you've mastered the tier below. So starting out the bottom, we have the highest priority, the CCW. This is your starting point, something you should be carrying with you every day. While the odds of you needing it are extremely low, there's a much, much, much higher chance you'll need this handgun before you need an AR-15 and a plate carrier. I cannot stress this enough, but the absolute vast majority of your training and time should be with this gun. If you cannot defend yourself, then how are you going to possibly defend others or even work in a team? You need to be so fucking competent with this handgun that you can draw and fire without even thinking. It needs to be a reflex. You need to be an expert. This handgun needs to be 50 yards capable as well. And I know, most self-defense situations you're at 7 yards. Okay, cool. But we're going to go beyond that because we're better than that. With the proliferation of mass shootings, 7 yards ain't going to cut it. Think about the length of a grocery store aisle. It's 100 yards or more. If the shooter's outside of your 7-yard bubble, you're just going to leave and let those people die? No, do better. Get better. Training through CCW so you can hit a man-sized target at 50 yards. It is a high standard, yes, but you're capable of it. Train until you can do that, whether it takes 1,000 rounds, 5,000, 20,000, it doesn't matter. It just has to be second nature. Like I said, you need to excel at this. All right, next, personal defense weapons, or PDWs. We've seen the number of mass riot incidents increase in the past decade. If you're attacked in these situations, something like a .380 pocket rocket's not going to save you. And something like a full-size AR-15 is going to be very, very high profile, as we saw. What you need is something small, more capable than a small CCW handgun, and ideally suppressed. Something you can stuff in a bag and throw in your car that will give you the ability to dispatch multiple attackers and maybe even engage out to 100 yards or more. This is probably the trickiest area on this pyramid because we don't have many good options. So let's start with some notes here. Most states do not allow loaded rifles in vehicles, so something like a pistol brace is going to be perfect here. Pistol brace laws are a minefield right now, so I don't know, maybe in a year it won't be an option. Just recently it became an option again. Abolish the ATF. Anyway, everything we talk about here should also have a suppressor on it. But not all states allow you to concealed carry an NFA item, which a suppressor is, so you're going to check your local laws. So keep these legal limitations in mind as we discuss the options. So option 1, larger handgun, something like a full-size handgun in a bag with a few mags. Just a lot of mags for your CCW. So like if you're concealed carrying a Glock, just shove a bunch of Glock mags in a bag. Option 2, trunk gun, something like a 10.5 air pistol or 300 blackout. This isn't great because it's going to take time to get to, doesn't really meet the requirements of being small and discreet, again unless it's suppressed 300 blackout. But this brings a lot of firepower to the table and pushes you way beyond the 100-yard range. Option 3, 9mm pistol caliber carbine, something like an MP5. This is still a bit on the large size, but it gives us a lot of firepower, and 100 meters is kind of pushing it with that. 200 you can kind of do, but you're stuck with the 9mm there. Option 4, pistol chassis or USW style weapon. The flux brace is basically perfect for this. It can have the same mags as your CCW pistol you already have. It is tiny, and it is a pistol so you can store it loaded. You can easily mount a can on it to make it discreet. Downside, it's a 9mm, and the tipping barrel doesn't give you the best accuracy. Once you get to about 100 yards, it's not that great. Another downside, they're almost all for the SIG 320, although I do have high hopes for the SIG 365 flux brace. Option 5, this is the holy grail. A 5.7 or some cartridge like that pistol chassis or PDW. Problem is, a good one doesn't really exist yet. Maybe in a few years the market will fill this gap, like the PSA X57. Every day I pray that Flux makes a chassis for a 5.7 handgun. That would be literally the perfect PDW. Ben from Flux, if you're watching this, I will give you the sloppiest fucking toppy on the planet for a 5.7 Flux brace. Please, I'm begging. Okay, now that those 2 previous levels are taken care of, and again, those need to be down pat before you start moving up to these other levels. Good AR-15. This is something that can be used for home defense. That's not its primary purpose. Let's go back to the Second Amendment, its intended purpose. It's for a militia. And militias may be called to war against another uniformed army or force if needs be. So this rifle needs to be up to snuff for 21st century standards. Now, a lot of you are already thinking, hey, I got this one knocked down pretty good already, right? You got 4 PSA ARs or whatever. Let's address the elephant in the room. Do you have a team put together yet? Or is it just you and your AR and no one else? Because that's basically useless. Do not put much effort in this category until you have a team of guys who you shoot and train with regularly. I know this is a tough pill to swallow, but it's the damn truth. And a quick reality check here, the chances of even needing this rifle are 1 in a million, probably more like 1 in a billion. It's a very, very, very low chance that our reality will ever come to this. But, again, it doesn't hurt to be equipped. So looking at it in this light, what does our rifle need to be? Well, it needs to be accurate. As civilians, we cannot afford suppression. We don't have the funding, nor do we have the logistics to use the military strategy of maneuvering around a belt-fed support weapon. What works for them probably won't work for us. Our next best option is suppression through accuracy. As such, your rifle should be 600 yards capable. A fair bit of your rifle training should be on small concealed targets at extended ranges, not endless 7-yard build drills that look cool on Instagram. Kicking in the doors as a small team is going to get you killed in a fucking heartbeat. Build your rifle around these hit-and-run, long-range tactics. You need to be extremely precise with this rifle. It 100% needs to be suppressed. As a small team, communication is paramount. So having an unsuppressed rifle blowing your buddy's ears out every time you shoot is not going to help you as a team. With suppressors, you can still communicate easily. On top of this, the can will conceal your exact location and reduce your muzzle flash significantly, especially at night. I cannot stress enough how bright a muzzle flash is at night. This rifle also needs to be affordable, needs to be sustainable. Again, as civilians, we're on our own. The funding is what we bring to the table, and we are our own armorer. So spare parts, including major components, need to be serviceable and available so you can stock up on them. If you are training enough, you'll even need to replace barrels. So what are your options? Yeah, it's an AR-15. Yeah, you saw that coming. Something like a 13.7 or a 14.5 with an ACOG or LPVO or something. A pre-built one, or you can build one yourself, that will excel in all these categories. They tend to have great accuracy. All of the parts are so easy to swap. 5.56 for training ammunition is very cheap. AAC 77 grain, which is a great cartridge to 600 yards and sometimes even further, it's like 62 cents a round. It's pretty cheap to stockpile that up, and it's available. Even something as short as like an 11.5 AR can make quick work of a target at 600 yards. Oh, but I know. You can't resist the goofy-ass non-AR, right? You gotta get that AUG. You gotta have that bullpup. You gotta have that MDR. Let's put it this way. The MDR is $22.50 for the base rifle. PSA Saber, $1,030. The money saved by getting the Saber can get you 1,600 rounds of 77 grain 5.56 or 2,500 rounds of 55 grain ammo for training. The training that ammo gives you will overcome any supposed advantage of the MDR. And I get it, ARs are boring, but most things that work well are boring. So there's another pill for you to swallow. Okay, NODs, night observation devices. I'm not going to go into huge detail here because I'm not an expert in this field. I'm not an expert in any of these fields, really. But I do know that you need them. By having nods and thermals, you're not going to be gods of the night when it comes to a peer threat. You're simply putting yourself on par, maybe a little bit below uniformed forces. So this is one of the few areas where you really do get what you pay for, so have your wallet ready, but you have to have them once you start working in a team. And we're looking at these kind of scenarios where you might be fighting a uniformed enemy. It's also important that with these nods, we're going out and we're training. We're shooting with them, but mainly we're maneuvering with them, just learning to get comfortable with them. It's kind of like learning a new way of walking and basically living at night. Okay, special weapons. This is at the top of the pyramid. So once everything else is on lock, right, then you start looking at these. So we can protect ourselves, right? We have a team. We have a good combat rifle. The team is night fight capable. We're all training together regularly. What's next? Force multipliers. I hate that word so much. But mainly for strike missions if, say, China invades or something that bad, which, again, reality check. Very, very, very low chance. These are all very expensive, so do not spend beyond your means. Don't spend beyond your means in any of these categories. If you've impoverished your family buying all this bullshit, then you've lost any battle before it even starts. So put that first. Anyway, I'm also not going to go into much depth here. Keep in mind, by the time you're buying these things, you should have your team put together. You should have at least 4 guys. And at that point, I trust that you're discussing what you need to specialize in your team based on your environment and how you want to operate. So this category has many subcategories. Let's just break it down, do a brief look at each. DMR, or Designated Marksman Rifle. Something with more accuracy and range than your 5.56 AR, but you probably want to keep it still semi-auto. These would be used for making contact or for countering enemy MG positions. So thanks to their superior ballistics, they can begin to engage enemies more immediately as the AR start to walk in their fire. Precision rifle, something like a 300 Win Mag or large caliber bolt gun, something that has these extended ranges. These will basically take one of your team members out of the close range game, but it gives them the ability to harass at extended ranges or lock down a dug-in position. So like, again, talking about enemy MG positions. After the 3rd guy gets hit on that MG at 1,000 yards, is the 4th guy going to hop on? So you can really use a precision rifle to just lock down one spot and neutralize the big advantage that uniformed forces have. The supporting gear for these is very, very expensive, and it takes a ton of training to get really efficient with these long-range rifles. It's not just laying down prone on the range and shooting at a known distance target. Try shooting from a concealed position in a weird position, something where you don't know the range. It gets very, very difficult very quickly. And things like wind calls, there's no shortcut. You just have to shoot enough until you know them all. So, a lot of training in this category, lots of money. Next up, we got the light machine gun, general purpose machine gun, support weapon, whatever you want to call it. So these would follow the military doctrine of shoot maneuver. You have one team of 4 guys with an MG doing the shooting. The other team is going to go around and maneuver. So don't even consider this if you only have a 4-man team. You need to have 8 men or more on your team to really even think about going into this category. This is by far the most expensive thing on this pyramid. First off, it's hard to acquire proper MGs for this role. There's MG part kits. They tend to be pretty dated. They can be a bitch to build. New production MGs are insanely expensive. The LMG AR, I think it's kind of a gimmick. If you just slap a bunch of D60s in your normal ARs, then you have a ton of firepower for like an ambush or something, so you basically get the same thing out of it. RPKs, these are actually cheap and plentiful, but 7.62 by 3.9 is garbage at range. Like, if you think it's a good cartridge, that means you just haven't shot beyond 400 yards. And you end up with something heavier, less effective than an AR. I would do an AR LMG over an RPK any day if you're going to do any of these stupid things. And all these are in semi-auto, unless you pay $50,000 or jump through all the hoops and get an O2 ST. While these could be useful for an ambush or defensive positions, I think the hurdles of properly running and maintaining an MG team as a civilian, where again, you are your own supply line, is just not viable. You're going to have to stockpile like $20,000 worth of ammo. If you're loaded in cash, go for it, I guess. Next up, sneaky boys. I'm not going to go into detail on what this purpose would be, but something super quiet, like a suppressed 300 blackout, 9mm, or even something like a 22 LR. Something that is absurdly quiet, maybe like as a sentry gun. Your 9mm, again, not the best range of 9mm, even worse of subsonics. Now, 300 blackout is decent at long range, especially with AAC's offerings of the lighter weight bullets. You can still maintain about 500 yards with the 300 blackout supersonic. Change a mag, now you're subsonic. So these are all also relatively cheap. So of the specialist categories, this is one of the cheaper ones. The only one that's cheaper is the breachers. Again, you want to avoid CQB as much as possible. Even the best equipped and trained teams with all the support in the world will take a ton of casualties when breaching buildings. But if you and your team live in a very urban area, then it's something that you have to come to grips with. If you have a mixed urban or rural environment, maybe something like a 10.5, 5.56 AR in your team, or maybe a few of them, would be ideal since you can still maintain this long-range performance. Keep in mind, like looking down the street, you still have hundreds of yards of distance, even in a city. In a more urban area, maybe a shotgun would do a little bit better. Shotguns are devastating at close range, but you basically lose all your long-range capability. You kind of lose your ability to do any night shooting. Yes, they make 12-gauge suppressors, but they're very encumbering and goofy. The other thing, too, which I can't touch much on because we can't actually test it, is against drones. We're seeing it in Ukraine, so shotguns would be good against drones, but if you shoot a drone here in the United States, it's the same thing as shooting down a commercial 737. The FAA is fucking insane. So again, this is all very loose guide. Once you have a team put together, you need to discuss what you need and what you don't need based on your environment. Most important thing to do, though, is go train, put that team together, then go train with that team. Also, you need to train efficiently. Once you hit a kind of plateau, you don't really need to train the area as much anymore. You just need to come back and do some refreshers to stay on top of it. For example, once you get the CCW draw and fire down to a reflex, just dust it off every once in a while, go out with a few boxes. Slinging 1,000 rounds downrange with your CCW every week will squeeze that last 5% of skill out of you. You know, might get your build drill down from 2.64 to 2.51, but was it worth that 1,000 rounds when you could have been spending that time and ammo and money on other training? So I apologize for how much a bore this video probably was, but there's not really a good way to do a huge info dump like this. But this video is important to put out because everything we do on this channel that is about a modern firearm is completely within this context. A lot of people ask, well, why do you know this? Why blah, 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 blah. This video explains it, right? This is the framework that everything runs on. But one final note, another reason we're making these videos and the shorts and things like that is to get you guys here to see this stuff. I fucking hate shorts, but if 1 million people watch a stupid short about a dirty AR, then 1,000 of them click on the channel, then 100 of them watch one of these videos. 10 of them go out and actually takes this shit seriously, and 1 of them follows through and actually does this training and becomes a better shooter and fulfills this modern Minuteman goal, then that's a job well done. I'd be very happy about that. That's all we care about. It's about time we take the Second Amendment and what it says seriously.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
You don't need a forward assist on an AR!
I hate Carl Casardo with every ounce of my soul.